Welcome to Stuck, Time to Improv. I'm Mary Scott with Business Riff, and I want startups to be wildly successful. Today, we're going to be talking about mindset and thought traps with Adam Kirsch, who's an expert in this area. Welcome, Adam.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mary. Happy to be here.
So, what got you interested in this particular aspect of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so I think certainly being a founder myself, I started two businesses, one in the entertainment space, one in software, advising a number of startups, investing in some early stage ventures, really gave me a sense of understanding of what is the challenge of going through these and how do you manage the complexity in your own psyche. So I started to see that in my own thoughts as a founder and entrepreneur. And I started to bring that together with some of my own interests, dating back to being an undergraduate student studying organizational behavior and realizing that, hey, actually, if we can optimize our mindset, we can really have a lot of great outcomes, not just for the founder, but really for the entire company. Because a founder who has a good sense of self-awareness, who has the right psychological approach to a business, is going to be able to do very well, not just for themselves, but really for their entire team.
Okay, so what are some key elements of a good mindset?
Yeah, so I think, one thing that's super, super important in startups is learning and having a mindset that is oriented towards growth and learning. I'm sure many folks out there have heard about the growth mindset. Maybe you've read a book like Mindset by Carol Dweck or Grit by Angela Duckworth. Um, but being oriented towards your growth and personal development is huge. And a big part of that is not just saying, hey, I want to learn, I want to grow, I want to go and be great, but also having an understanding of the fact that it's naturally tough to do that. Growth is challenging by its nature. And if we're not making mistakes, we're really not going to capture the learnings that we would, right? Like the best lessons are often those learned hardest, for better or for worse. And one thing I like to tell to founders I advise or with companies I work with is it's not my goal to stop you from making mistakes. It's my goal to help you make better mistakes. And if that's the track you're on, you're going to be in a successful place.
Right. Make the mistakes that are going to be useful to you in your business, not the common mistakes startups make that I do workshops about, because you don't want to do the same stupid things that other people have done before you. You need to make the mistakes that are useful to you, right?
Absolutely. I think very well said.
So, what are some of the blocks that come in and can get people to stop where they from going further where they need to go?
One that's very commonly talked about is imposter syndrome, that idea of, should I be here? Am I the right person for this? And I think in entrepreneurship, it's natural to feel that way, but inherently you're starting something new. People may not have done it before, or maybe you are just thinking about others who have done it in a particular way, and you're saying, why am I not like them? When in reality, you could really lean into your own strengths a little bit harder. Often in those cases, I try to just remind folks, leaders of companies or founders, entrepreneurs, that it's natural to feel that way at the beginning and to work through it. And having an awareness of that is important, right? Knowing why you're feeling that way and being able to say tactically, here's the steps I'm going to take to learn. Here's the steps I'm going to take to get better. It actually creates a condition for self-improvement if you're self-aware about it and if you're not intimidated by it. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind. Another thing that I see on the other side of that is escalation of commitment, where you have folks, founders who go very, very deep on an idea that might be suboptimal. I was talking to a founder recently who is hanging up their venture after 24 months. And obviously, right, it's a tricky funding climate. There's a lot of other obstacles. But I think if you start to lean in really hard to something that's not working, you may feel this desire to see something through, even if you're seeing it through to its to its death. And one thing I do try to remind founders is ultimately picking a course of action doesn't mean you have to be wedded to that course of action forever, right? If you have new information, if things have changed, it's okay to go back and revisit and pivot. That's part of the game. Pivoting is natural.
I think you're not a real entrepreneur if you haven't pivoted at least once.
Right,
And I
exactly.
used to say, you're not really in business until you've fired your first client.
That's a lesson I wish I had learned earlier.
Yeah, things like that. Um, so yeah, with imposter syndrome and being scared about doing something, be scared, but do it anyway, because that's how you learn, that's how you grow. And if it's a mistake, you learn from it. And if it's not, hey, yay for you.
Couldn't agree more.
So do you have any other tips for startups particularly?
Yeah, I think as a founder, right, it's very challenging without question. I think what people don't realize is that it's not just challenging for you as a founder. You also create a lot of stress and pressure on those around you, and they're going to experience it differently than you are. So, for example, if you're an entrepreneur, you're also going to create stress, right, for your family, for your significant other, um, in a different way than you might experience it. So it's very important to be, clearly communicating about, your own mindset about the venture, making sure you're understanding where others who you're existing with are at, and also thinking about how your dynamic with your business is different from the dynamic that others might have with it. So I'll give an example, right? If you're an investor, you're spreading risk out across a number of investments. And if any one of those investments goes south, you're not necessarily you're not necessarily screwed, for lack of a better term. But if you're an entrepreneur and you've put your life into something and it fails, right, there's a very strong reaction that will come with that. Likewise, an employee is going to be different from a founder, is going to be different from somebody who maybe joins a company that's a little bit further along. So I think there's a lot of different things to keep in mind when founders are operating and how they deal with the interpersonal dynamics of startups. So one thing I always recommend is, just do a quick check when things are going poorly, right? You always want to over communicate when things are going poorly. You always want to be very clear with your investors. They can't help you if something's already gone wrong, as well as they could have if they had known kind of when things might have been trending in that direction. So it's very easy to say, I want to project this idea of crushing it. I think a lot of the startup media has kind of hinged on this idea of projecting that you're crushing it for years. But it's really about being able to understand there's going to be bitter and sweet, and having a stable mindset through it where you're looking at the facts and you're not amplifying something or downplaying something or thinking in black and white is something that I think really helps reel in your psychology as an entrepreneur and keep you focused on the things that are going to be most important.
Sure. And never, ever lie to an investor.
No,
That is
absolutely
going
not.
to kill you for future reference if that happens. You got to be honest with yourself and with the people around you. And
Yeah.
apropos of relationships, I used to have this thing with my husband. If either of us had a bad day, when you get back to into contact with each other, it's I had a really bad day. I need to vent. And if you're not interested in just being convenient, you can go somewhere else right now.
Yeah, and I appreciate that quite a bit, right? I do think it is important to be self-aware about when we're bringing that home or bringing it into another interaction. It's very easy for one interaction to kind of bleed into the next. So to the extent that you can be aware about it and control for it and communicate about it, it just makes you a more effective operator.
Right, exactly. Well, thank you so much, Adam Kirsch. We'll put information in the chat on anything else that people need to contact you or if you've got something to share. And I'm Mary Scott with Business Riff. I want startups to be wildly successful. And one of the best things you can do to accomplish that is book a synergy call with me at businessriff.com. And join us again next time for Stuck, Time to Improv.